I tried to give my wife the perfect gender reveal. My name's Colton, 31 male. And if you'd asked me a year ago what kind of dad I'd be, I would have said the calm one. I'm the kind of guy who reads instructions twice and never leaves a grill unattended. My wife Melody, 29 female, used to joke that if we ever got stranded on an island, I'd already have a shelter built, while everyone else argued, which is why what happened still doesn't make sense to me. Melody and I had agreed. Early on, we didn't want anything huge for our gender reveal. Just close family, a few friends, and a backyard barbecue where we would bite into a cupcake and find out if we were having a boy or a girl. Simple, but somewhere between week 12 and week 19, Simple got hijacked, and the person doing the hijacking was my sister-in-law Vanessa. 27 female Vanessa is the kind of person who refers to her own life as a journey and means it on. She's also got about 40,000 followers across different social media platforms, which, according to her, makes her a micro-public figure. Every birthday, engagement, or holiday becomes a production. Ring lights come out before cakes. When she heard we were keeping the gender reveal small, she gasped. "You only get one first baby reveal?" she said, standing in our kitchen. This is a memory. A moment. You can't just bite a cupcake. That's 2016 energy. Melody laughed at first, but Vanessa didn't laugh back. "I know an event guy," she said. "He does reveals all the time." I should have pushed back harder. I should have said no, full stop. But Melody looked so tired that day, one hand resting on her stomach. She'd been nauseous for weeks, work was stressful, and her ankles were starting to swell. And when Vanessa started showing her videos of soft color cannons that shot biodegradable powder into the air like a dreamy cloud, Melody's whole face lit up. "It's kind of pretty," she said quietly. I wanted to give her something magical, so I said yes. The plan grew legs after that. What was supposed to be 15 people turned into 50. Vanessa said it was for the vibes. She convinced Melody to move it from our backyard to a rented, open field at a local community park, so there'd be room for good angles. I handled the permits where I double-checked the park rules. No open flames, no fireworks, and nothing explosive. Vanessa's guy, whose name was Trevor, assured me the revealed device was compressed air only. No fire, just a burst of colored powder. It's basically a confetti cannon without confetti. He told me over the phone. "We do these all the time." I asked him 3 separate times if it was safe, and he sounded almost offended. "Man, we've done these next 2 wedding dresses worth more than my car. You're good." The day of the reveal was bright and windy. The field looked beautiful. Golden grass stretched out under a balloon. Arch Vanessa had bullied me into helping assemble. Melody wore a soft white dress that flowed around her bump, and every time I looked at her, I felt this mix of terror and awe. We made this a whole person. Our parents mingled. My mum cried before anything even happened. Melody's dad shook my hand like I'd personally invented pregnancy. Trevor showed up an hour early with a black cylindrical device about the size of a small trash can. He set it up on a little platform Vanessa had decorated with flowers. "Wind's a little strong," I said, watching the grass ripple. He shrugged. "It'll just make the cloud spread more." "Looks cooler on video?" Something in my chest tightened. But Vanessa was already directing people where to stand, talking about wind movement like she was filming a shampoo commercial. Melody squeezed my hand. "You're okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just a lot of people." She smiled. "They love us." When it was time, everyone gathered in a loose semicircle. Phones came up like we were about to witness a rare animal in the wild. Trevor handed me a small remote. "Hold this down for 3 seconds, he said. "It'll fire straight up." Straight up, I repeated. Melody stood beside me, her fingers laced through mine. She was shaking a little. Ready? She whispered. Ready, I said. Even though I suddenly wasn't. Vanessa started a countdown, loud and dramatic. 3, 2, 1. I pressed the button for a split second. Nothing happened then. There was a loud thump. Not a pop, not a soft puff. A deep, concussive sound I felt in my ribs. A column of bright powder shot upward and then sideways. The wind caught it instantly, bending the cloud hard to the right instead of straight up. A thick plume of pink blasted toward the edge of the field, where a small cluster of trees lined the park boundaries. Laughed at first, thinking it was part of the show. Then someone else shouted, "Oh my God!" The powder wasn't just drifting, it was sparking. Tiny flickers of orange light danced inside the cloud like angry fireflies. Not supposed to. Trevor started. The wind shoved the pink clouds straight into the dry brush under the trees, and the brush ignited. At first it was just a thin line of flame, like someone had drawn fire along the ground with a match. Then the wind fed it. The line turned into a wall. People started screaming as Melody's hand crushed mine. "Colton, I've got you," I said, already pulling her back. Trevor was swearing. Trying to drag the device away like that would undo what had already happened. Vanessa stood frozen, still filming, her mouth open. "Call 911. Someone yelled. "I am?" Someone else shouted back. The fire raced along the dry grass faster than anything I'd ever seen in real life. I grabbed Melody around the shoulders and moved her toward the parking lot. My brain had narrowed down to one single command: get her out behind us. People were scrambling. A stroller got left behind. Someone ran back for it and nearly fell. Sirens wailed in the distance within minutes, but those minutes stretched like hours. By the time we reached the car, Melody was sobbing. "The baby." She kept saying, "The baby, the baby." "I know," I said, my own voice shaking. We're okay. But when I looked back at the field, and the growing plume of black smoke climbing into the sky, one horrible thought pushed through everything. Else started with me. I pressed the button. The fire department got it under control before it reached any houses. That's the sentence everyone kept repeating like it was a silver lining, big enough to cancel everything else out. Everybody kept repeating, "It could have been worse." But could have been worse doesn't hit the same when you're sitting on the curb with your pregnant wife, watching firefighters stomp out smoking patches of earth, while news vans start pulling into the parking lot Melody was wrapped in. A scratchy gray blanket someone had pulled from an emergency kit. Her face was pale and mascara streaked down her cheeks. A paramedic had checked her vitals and the baby's heartbeat with a handheld monitor strong and steady. He'd said I almost broke down right there from relief. But relief didn't last long, because then the park ranger walked over. He had that stiff demeanor that people in authority use when they're very, very angry. Who was responsible for the device? He asked. Trevor tried to speak. It was stepped forward. Me? I don't even know why I said it so fast. Maybe because it felt true in the biggest sense. I was the one who'd agreed and pushed the button. The ranger nodded once. "I'll need your information." Behind him, I could see a blackened strip of land cutting through the golden field like a scar. Trees at the edge were still smoking, their lower branches charred. Pangaea finally approached us, eyes red. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "They told me it was safe." "They said?" I held up a hand. I just couldn't hear it. Not yet. Melody leaned into me, and I felt how small she suddenly seemed. "We just wanted a party." She whispered, "I know," I said, but the world had already decided it was more than a party by that night. The videos were everywhere. Someone had been filming from the far side of the field and caught the sideways blast. The sparks and the flames, catching and running like they'd been waiting for an... Excuse the caption on the first viral post read, "Another gender reveal starts a fire. When will people learn?" I watched it on my phone at 2 a.m. while Melody slept fitfully beside me. Over and over, I saw myself in the corner of the frame holding the remote. Comments poured in faster than I could read arrest them. People like this shouldn't be allowed to reproduce. All for attention. I wanted to reply to every single one. We didn't mean to. We checked. We were told it was safe. But the video didn't show the phone calls, the questions, or the hesitation. It just showed the fire. The call from the fire investigator came the next morning. They needed statements, contracts, names of vendors, and proof of permits. Everything with while Melody sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. "This is my fault," she said suddenly. "No," I said immediately. "It's not. I wanted it," she whispered. I said it was pretty. "Melody," I knelt in front of her. "You wanted colored powder in the air? Not this." She looked at me like she wanted to believe that, but didn't know how. Trevor stopped answering his phone by day 2. Vanessa, to her credit, did not. She came over with coffee and swollen eyes, her usual glam replaced by guilt I never would have pushed if I thought. "She started, I know," Melody said, softly. Didn't say anything. Because here's the part that makes this story harder. Vanessa didn't mean to hurt us. But intent doesn't unburn a field. And it definitely doesn't stop the letter from the city that came a week later. An official notice of investigation into damages, emergency response costs, and potential negligence. The number at the bottom of the preliminary estimate made my vision blur. It was more than I made in a year, and much more than Melody and I had in savings. I read it 3 times before I could breathe again. "We'll figure it out," Melody said, but her voice shook. I nodded, pretending I had an idea how. Then Trevor's company website disappeared and his social media was deleted. The contract he'd emailed me suddenly looked off. The business address was a P.O. box. The license number listed didn't match any local vendor when I searched it. I called the number again and got a disconnected tone. Vanessa came over that night and I watched the color drain from her face as I showed her. "I swear he was legit," she said. "He did my friend's wedding sparkler exit." "Was there actual fire?" I asked. "No, just cold spark machines." I closed my eyes. We had trusted a guy with a machine we didn't understand because he had good vibes and a few decent Instagram Pangea species. And now he was gone. Which meant, in the eyes of the city, the responsibility didn't vanish with him. It settled squarely on the people whose names were on the permit. The news cycle moved on after a few days, but the internet didn't. Strangers found our baby registry and left nasty messages in the gift notes. Someone mailed a box of extinguishers to our house with no return address. Melody stopped going online entirely. I tried to be strong for both of us, but every time the phone rang from an unknown number, my stomach dropped. "This was an accident," I said during one meeting with a lawyer, my voice breaking. "We didn't act recklessly." He gave me a long look. "You used a pyrotechnic-style device in dry, windy conditions. It wasn't supposed to be." "I believe you," he said gently. "But belief and liability aren't the same thing." I lay awake that night and stared at the ceiling. I had wanted to give Melody a magical memory. Instead, I might have given our child a life that started under a mountain of consequences. And I had no idea yet how far someone was willing to go. To make sure we carried all of them alone, the first time someone recognized me in public. I was standing in line at a grocery store, holding a basket with prenatal vitamins and frozen waffles. I wasn't prepared for it. A woman, a few places behind me, leaned toward her friend and whispered, not quietly enough, "That's him. The gender reveal fire guy." Her friend looked me up and down like she was inspecting damage. I didn't turn around or defend myself. I paid and left with my ears burning and my chest tight, like I'd swallowed something sharp. That became my new normal. Everywhere I went, there was a chance I wasn't just Colton anymore. I was a headline meanwhile. The actual consequences were getting heavier. The city officially billed us for emergency response costs for the fire, department deployment, park cleanup, and environmental restoration. The final number landed just under 6 figures. I stared at it in silence while Melody sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her hands folded protectively over her stomach. "They can't expect us to pay all of this," she said. "They do," I replied in assurance. Denied coverage 2 days later. I called them and argued until my throat hurt. "This wasn't intentional," I said. "It was an accident." "The use of the device was intentional," the adjuster replied calmly. "The outcome doesn't change the classification." When I hung up, Melody was crying quietly, trying not to make it obvious. I felt like I was failing in slow motion. Vanessa tried to help. She hired a lawyer of her own, convinced she could track Trevor down. She filed complaints and messaged people who'd commented on his old posts. She even offered to sell her car to contribute, but every door led to nothing. Trevor had vanished cleanly. No forwarding address, no registered business, and no trace. Beyond a fake-friendly voice and a disappearing act, which meant the spotlight stayed on Usui, went to court a couple weeks later. They said it was just a procedural preliminary hearing. But it didn't feel procedural when I stood in front of a judge explaining how my unborn child's gender reveal had turned into a wildfire. The opposing attorney painted a picture that barely resembled reality. "You wanted a spectacle," she said. "Yet you disregarded environmental conditions. You endangered public land." "That's not true," I said, my voice cracking. "We followed the rules. We were told it was safe." She smiled sympathetically. "That's what everyone says." The judge didn't rule that day, but it was clear this wasn't going away. Quietly, Melody stopped sleeping. She'd wake up at 3 in the morning, convinced the stress was hurting the baby. Her doctor reassured us repeatedly, but reassurance only went so far. When every envelope in the mailbox felt like another blow one night, she broke down completely. "What if they take everything?" she sobbed. "What if we can't give our baby a good life because of one stupid moment?" I held her while she cried, but inside, the same fear echoed. I'd wanted to protect my family, but instead, I'd put them in the crosshairs. The lowest point came when Melody went viral, without even being present. Someone dug up an old baby shower photo she'd posted months before the fire, and it with a caption, mocking her smile before you burn down a park. It read, "I watched her see it for the first time, and I watched something harden behind her eyes." "That's it?" she said quietly. "What?" I asked. "I'm done letting this happen to us." I didn't know what she meant yet, but I found out the next morning. She'd made a long post of the full story, written in her own words. She told all about the planning, the questions we asked, and the assurances we were given. She didn't ask for sympathy. She asked for accountability. She named Trevor's company and posted screenshots of emails and contracts. She explained how easily people like us could be misled. Within hours, it started spreading. People began commenting with their own stories of similar setups, similar reassurances, and similar near misses. One comment stopped me cold. "He did my cousin's reveal last year under a different name. Device malfunctioned. They paid out of pocket to keep it quiet." "Melody saw it to Colton," she said. "We're not the only ones." By the end of the week, 3 other families had come forward, all from different cities but all fitting the same. Patunjanors reached out again, but this time, they wanted the whole picture. The story shifted from reckless parents to unregulated vendors exploiting trends. a state investigator, contacted us asking for everything we had. For the first time in months, something felt like it was moving in the right direction, but the damage wasn't undone. The stress had already taken its toll. Melody was hospitalized briefly for high blood pressure related to anxiety. The doctors were cautious but calm. Still, sitting beside her bed, listening to monitors beep steadily, I felt a level of guilt that words don't really touch. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about whether we'd survive this intact and whether the system would finally see what we'd been screaming since day one. The turning point didn't come with fireworks or courtroom drama. It came with a knock on our door. A plainclothes investigator stood on our porch holding a folder thick enough to bend. "We believe the individual you hired is part of a larger operation," she said. "Multiple aliases, unlicensed equipment, and a pattern of disappearing after incidents." I felt my knees weaken. "So you found him?" I asked. She nodded. "And more importantly, we found his money." The case widened fast. What had been framed as our negligence was suddenly reframed as consumer fraud. The state froze accounts tied to Trevor's operation. They linked shell companies and found evidence he'd deliberately downplayed risks to close deals quickly. Emails surfaced where he acknowledged wind dangers, emails he'd never sent to us. When our lawyer called with the update, I had to pull over because my hands were shaking too badly to drive. "They're moving to remove primary liability from you," he said. "It's not over, but this is big." I cried in my car like a kid. The city revised its stance. They reduced the restitution significantly and agreed to a structured plan instead of immediate payment. Insurance reopened our claim under a different classification. The judge acknowledged we'd been misled, and for the first time, no one asked why we'd wanted a gender reveal. They asked why someone had been allowed to profit from endangering people. The internet swung the other way. Support flooded in, alongside apologies from strangers who admitted they'd judged too quickly. Our daughter was born on a quiet morning months later. Melody squeezed my hand and cried with relief as the nurse placed this tiny, perfect human on her chest. She was strong and healthy, completely unaware of the chaos she'd survived before taking her first breath. As I held her, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. We'd made IT thought the worst part of the nightmare was over once our daughter was born, but I was wrong. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in weird, uneven waves. And just when you think you can breathe, another reminder of the past shows up like smoke you thought had already cleared. We named our daughter Harper. The first weeks with her were a blur of late-night feedings, tiny socks disappearing into the void, and Melody crying over how small Harper's fingernails were. Normal new parent chaos. The kind we had been terrified we might never get to experience, but even in the softness of those early days, reality lingered. Bills still came in the mail, and court dates still loomed. Every now and then, an article would resurface about that gender reveal fire, recycling the old footage like it was breaking news again. I learned not to read the comments. The criminal case against Trevor, whose real name turned out not even to be Trevor, gained momentum. More victims came forward, including a family whose reveal device had exploded sideways and injured a guest badly enough to require surgery. That was the moment the charges shifted from fraud to criminal negligence. Our lawyer explained it carefully. "They're building a pattern," he said. "And you're one of the key cases?" I didn't know how to feel about that. On one hand, it meant we weren't crazy. We hadn't imagined the assurances. On the other hand, it meant a lot of people got hurt before the system caught up. I carried that weight quietly, but Melody handled things differently. She turned outward. What started as that one post explaining our sides slowly grew into something bigger. She connected with other families, helped them file reports, and shared resources about checking vendor licenses and event safety laws. She didn't do it for attention. If anything, she hated attention now. She did it because she didn't want anyone else sitting on their kitchen floor at midnight, staring at a bill that could swallow their future one night. I found her rocking Harper with one hand and typing with the other. You don't have to. Carry this for everyone, I said gently. I know, she replied. But I can help. And helping makes it feel like it wasn't just pointless pain. The sentencing hearing came almost a year after the reveal. Walking into that courtroom felt like stepping back into the worst day of my life, except now Harper existed, and that changed everything. She stayed with my mum, but I carried a photo of her in my wallet, like Armutha. Man they brought in didn't look like the confident vendor who had shaken my hand in a sunny field. He looked smaller and thinner and avoided eye contact. They read out the charges, all of the aliases and falsified permits, and the internal messages where he joked about easy money from emotional parents. My stomach twisted. When it was my turn to give a statement, my hands trembled. But my voice didn't. We thought we were celebrating our child, I said. Instead, we spent the first year of her life fighting to keep ours from falling apart. We were blamed, harassed, and nearly financially ruined because you chose profit over safety. He didn't look at me. The judge sentenced him to prison time and ordered restitution to the victims, including us. We all knew we'd never see most of that money, but the point wasn't the check. The point was the truth being put on record. We weren't reckless monsters, we were misled. And now it was official. Closure is a strange thing. It doesn't feel like a door slamming shut. It feels like a door you forget to check one day because you realize you're not afraid of what's behind it anymore. Financial side took longer to settle, but it did settle. The reduced restitution combined with a civil judgment against the vendor's assets meant we weren't drowning anymore. Still sat back, but not buried. We kept the paperwork in a box in the hall closet as a reminder that we survived it. The first birthday party we threw for Harper was the complete opposite of the reveal. No trendy spectacles, just close family, a homemade cake Melody decorated herself, and a single pink candle. Harper tried very hard to eat. Instead of blowout, I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching everyone laugh in our living room. Sunlight coming through the curtains, my daughter squealing as frosting ended up in her hair. Vanessa caught my eye from across the room. We'd had hard conversations over the year. Tears were shed, along with some guilt that never fully goes away. But we'd made it through too. She raised her coffee mug toward me in a quiet cheers, and I nodded back. Forgiveness doesn't mean nod. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let the worst moment be the final one. Later that night, after everyone left and Harper was asleep, Melody and I sat on the couch, surrounded by half-deflated balloons. Do you ever wish we could redo it? She asked softly. The reveal? I thought about the field, the smoke, and the sirens that used to haunt my dreams. Then I thought about hospital monitors, courtroom benches, and finally Harper's tiny hand gripping my finger like I was the only solid thing in the world. No, I said. She looked surprised. Really? If we redo it, I said, we don't get here the same way? And as awful as it was, it led to him getting stopped. It led to other families being heard. It led to you helping people. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'd still skip the fire part, she said. I laughed. Yeah, me too. People still occasionally recognize us. But now it's different. Sometimes it's, hey, your story made me double-check a vendor. Or, because of you guys, we asked way more questions. We became a warning, sure. but also a shield if you're reading this because you saw a clip or a headline or a joke about another dumb gender reveal. Here's what I want you to know. Most people aren't chasing viral moments. They're just trying to create a little joy in a world that feels heavy. We were those people. We made a choice we thought was safe. We trusted the wrong person, and we paid for it in ways we never imagined, but we also fought back. We told the truth, and held on to each other when it would have been easier to fall apart. At the end of all of it, we got the only reveal that ever really mattered to our Harper's parents, and we're still standing.